We're used to thinking that before the internet, communication was agonizingly slow and unbearably unreliable. In part, that's true. But if you look closer, the systems our ancestors created were true marvels of logistics and engineering. They were as fast and as reliable as the physics of that world allowed, and often their efficiency is staggering even today. Let's start with the simplest and most ancient method: a human, a messenger, a runner. In our minds, it's an image straight out of a history textbook. A half-naked Greek running from Marathon to Athens to shout, "Rejoice, Athenians, we are victorious," and then die. The legend of Pheidippides is beautiful, but it reveals the main drawback of this method. A person is a one-time resource. He can run an incredible distance at the limit of his strength, but after that, he is useless. You can't build an empire on that. The Persians were the first to understand this. The great king Darius I in the 5th century BCE created what could be called the world's first federal courier service, the Royal Road. This wasn't just a road, it was a system. Imagine a highway nearly 2,700 kilometers long, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the heart of the Persian Empire. Along this road, every 25 to 30 kilometers, a day's journey for a horse, there was a postal station, a haparkhane. At each station were fresh, choice horses ready to bolt at a moment's notice, and professional couriers, angars. How did it work? A messenger from the capital would leap onto a horse and gallop non-stop to the first station. Another messenger would already be waiting for him there. The message was passed from hand to hand like a relay baton. The rider would mount a fresh, powerful steed and fly onward. The system operated 24/7 in any weather. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who held no great love for the Persians, wrote of their couriers with unconcealed admiration. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. And what was the speed? An ordinary caravan or army would travel the royal road in 3 months, a royal courier with an important dispatch in 7 to 9 days. 7 days versus 90. This isn't just fast, it's astonishingly fast. For its time, it was the speed of light. This system allowed the king to govern a gigantic empire, receive reports from satraps, give orders to armies, and crush rebellions in their infancy. It was an instrument of absolute power, built on the speed of information. The Romans, geniuses of systematization, took this idea to perfection. Their cursus publicus, public post, system covered the entire empire with a network of stone-paved roads. They had 2 types of couriers: fast ones on horseback and slow ones in wagons for transporting cargo and officials. To use this postal service, one needed a special document, a diploma, signed by the emperor or a governor. It was a kind of pass, granting the right to receive fresh horses and lodging at the stations. The system was so reliable that a letter from Rome to Britain could arrive in 3 to 4 weeks, an incredible time for a journey that would have taken months on foot. But what if the road was impassable? What if an enemy had besieged a city and cut off all routes? This is where another, even more amazing tool took the stage: the carrier pigeon. The ability of these birds to return to their dovecote from enormous distances seems like magic, but humans learned to use it for their own purposes thousands of years ago. The pigeon was the ideal courier. It flew at a speed of 60 to 100 kilometers per hour. It didn't need roads, it crossed mountains, rivers, and front lines. It was almost impossible to intercept. Of course, the system had its downsides. A pigeon flew in only one direction, home. Therefore, for two-way communication, you had to keep pigeons from different dovecotes. But for transmitting urgent messages, it was indispensable. Genghis Khan, in creating his vast Mongol empire, actively used not only mounted messengers, but also pigeon posts. Dovecotes were built all across Asia, allowing the Khan to receive information from the most remote corners of his domain. In besieged cities, releasing a pigeon with a note tied to its leg was the last hope for salvation. And sometimes a pigeon could bring not just news, but an entire fortune. The most famous example is the story of the Rothschild family and the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The entire London Stock Exchange was frozen, awaiting news. Who had won, Napoleon or the coalition led by Wellington? The prices of all stocks depended on it. Nathan Rothschild, head of the London House, had his own network of couriers and carrier pigeons, the fastest in Europe. When his agent on the battlefield saw that Napoleon was losing, he immediately dispatched a pigeon to England. The bird delivered the news to Rothschild many hours before the official government courier, who was delayed by a storm in the English Channel. Nathan arrived at the exchange with a grim face and began to pointedly sell his British government bonds. Everyone assumed he had received news of Wellington's defeat and rushed to frantically get rid of their securities. Prices plummeted. At that moment, Rothschild's agents quietly bought up everything they could for a pittance. The next day, when the official news of the great victory arrived, bond prices soared sky high. In a single day, Nathan Rothschild had made a colossal fortune. He didn't hack a server or intercept traffic. He simply had a faster, more reliable postman with wings. But both messengers and pigeons were the prerogative of the powerful. Rulers, generals, bankers. What about ordinary people? For a long time, the only way for them to send a letter was to find an acquaintance, a merchant, or a pilgrim who was heading in the right direction. It was slow, unreliable, and the letter could easily get lost. Everything changed during the Renaissance, when private enterprise took up the cause. The Thurn-on-Taxis family, originally from Italy, created the world's first international commercial postal service. At the end of the 15th century, they received a monopoly on postal transport from the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. They built a network of routes across all of Europe, from Brussels to Rome, from Paris to Vienna. They had clear schedules, fixed rates, and they guaranteed delivery. Now, an ordinary merchant, scholar, or simply a well-to-do citizen could go to a Thurn-on-Taxis office, pay money, and be sure that his letter would reach its recipient. Their system was so effective that they remained the Postmasters General of Europe for nearly 400 years. They essentially invented the modern postal service. However, along with speed and reliability, a new problem arose: confidentiality. A letter passing through dozens of hands could easily be opened and read. For lovers, this was unpleasant. For kings, conspirators, and spies, it was deadly. Thus was born the art of cryptography, secret writing. The simplest cipher known since the time of ancient Rome is the Caesar cipher. To conceal the content of his orders, Gaius Julius Caesar simply replaced each letter in a message with another. 3 positions further down the alphabet. A became D, B became E, and so on. To an illiterate century, such a letter was just a collection of meaningless symbols, but anyone who knew the key, a shift of 3, could easily read the message. Of course, such a simple cipher is easy to break. As diplomacy and espionage developed, ciphers became more complex. An eternal arms race began between cryptographers and cryptanalysts. One of the most dramatic stories of this invisible war is the fate of Mary, Queen of Scots. In 1586, she was imprisoned in England and was the main hope of the Catholics who wished to overthrow the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I. Mary conducted a secret correspondence with conspirators planning Elizabeth's assassination. Her letters were encrypted with a complex code where each letter of the alphabet, as well as some common words and names, was replaced by one of many special symbols. The letters were hidden in beer barrels and secretly passed to the Queen. Mary was confident that her correspondence was secure. She did not know that all her mail was being monitored by Sir Francis Walsingham, the head of Elizabeth's Secret Service. His men intercepted the letters, made copies, and then passed them to the brilliant cryptanalyst Thomas Phillips. He, using frequency analysis in any language, some letters appear more often than others, and his intuition broke Mary's cipher step by step. In one of the letters, the conspirator Anthony Babington directly asked Mary if she approved of the plan to assassinate Elizabeth. Walsingham and Philipse waited for the reply. When they intercepted and deciphered the letter in which Mary gave her consent, the Scottish Queen's fate was sealed. The decrypted correspondence became the main evidence at her trial, and Mary Stuart was beheaded. Her life was cut short, not by the betrayal of an ally, but because her cipher was not strong enough. Ciphers became increasingly complex. Grill ciphers appeared, as did polyalphabetic ciphers, where the same letter could be encrypted with different symbols depending on its position in the text. Secret writing became a true science, vital for waging wars and governing states. By the early 19th century, the postal system had reached the peak of its pre-electric development. Mail coaches raced along the roads of Europe and America, changing horses at stations. In England, the world's first postage stamp appeared, the penny black. It sparked a revolution by introducing a simple and ingenious principle. The sender pays for delivery, not the recipient. This simplified and cheapened mailing, making the post accessible to virtually everyone. The apotheosis of the messenger era was the legendary American service of the Pony Express. In 1860, it connected the east and west of the United States, reducing the delivery time for a letter from Missouri to California from several weeks to just 10 days. Young, lightweight riders galloped across prairies and mountains, changing horses every 15 to 20 kilometers and passing the mail pouch, the mochila, like a relay baton. It was an incredibly dangerous and grueling job, but it became a symbol of speed and reliability. However, its fame was short-lived. The Pony Express existed for only a year and a half. It was killed by the thing that would change the world of communications forever. That killer was the telegraph. In 1861, the transcontinental telegraph line was completed. Now, a message that took the best writers 10 days to deliver could be transmitted in a matter of minutes. Distance was dead. Human endurance and the speed of a horse became an anachronism in an instant. The electric pulse running along a wire proved faster than any messenger. But even after the appearance of the telegraph and then the telephone, physical mail did not disappear. It simply became different. Railroads made it possible to transport huge volumes of letters and parcels at unprecedented speeds. Mail cars appeared, where letters were sorted right on the moving train. Looking back on this centuries-long history, you understand. Our ancestors were not primitive and slow. They were incredibly inventive. They created the most complex systems that operated at the very limits of the physical possibilities of their time. They built roads, bred the best horses, tamed birds, invented ingenious ciphers, all for one goal: to transmit a thought, an order, or a feeling across a distance as quickly and reliably as possible. And each of these systems, from the Persian Anger to the Pony Express writer, was a true miracle, a small internet of its time, woven from sweat, courage, and human genius.